Okay, good morning, everyone, and a happy Hanukkah. Thank you all for joining us on this beautiful morning, right? Nice and crispy, but not too cold, right? I guess we're trying to get a little Hanukkah weather, the little chill out there. But okay, that's not what you guys signed up to hear about. We're going to talk about, we're going to do a combination of Shmir Shalashon, and we're going to talk a little bit about Hanukkah. If there's any questions or anything you guys want to, discuss that's related a little to Shmir Shalashon or Hanukkah, I'm actually going to leave a couple minutes in the end because I want to do a little question and answer if anybody has anything they want to talk about. And if you don't worry about it. I have plenty to say. That's nothing to worry about that. Okay, so we are up to page 212, day 70, and let's get cracking. So the interesting halakha over here. So you've been learning Shmir Shalashon, right? You've been part of this class now for a good part of a year, right? Or a year and a half, or 2 months, or you just joined today, right? And you want to learn more about Shmir Shalashon. Watch, Shmirat means to watch, halashon, the tongue, right? Means to say watching our language, watching how we talk. That's what we call this limud, this learning that we're doing, this subject that we're doing, it's called Shmirat Halashon, right? And you're doing this in memory of your for health of your mother. Who cares, right? I don't know. They add that in there, right? But you're doing it because you want to be a good Jew, right? And you want to be a good person, and you want to be able to know the laws of Shmirat Halashon. Now you're at a kiddush. Right, Baruch Hashem, thank God things are opening up. Let's hope they stay that way, right? And you're at Kiddush, and it's a nice, fancy Kiddush or a regular, simple Kiddush, right? And you're sitting at a table with a bunch of friends, and your heightened awareness kicks in as they begin their half-joking mockeries of the members and other Jewish communities and towns, right? Or about a friend, whatever it is, right? They start doing. They start doing their typical chatter, yenteim, as we call it, right? About other people, other communities, other things, right? And you have been learning Shmir Shalashon now for a little while, so you have awareness of this stuff, and therefore, right? Therefore, you are aware that this is heading in the wrong direction. Right? Maybe something hasn't been said yet, or maybe something has been said, right? But you realize that this is going the wrong direction. Should you attempt to stop them, right? Should you attempt to stop them, yes or no? Okay, what does the survey say out there, guys?
Yes.
Yes, okay, Jim is a yes, a strong yes. Anybody else?
I think it depends who it is.
Good Jews.
Certain people, they're going to laugh at you, so I think it depends on if they're the kind of person who can hear that or not. Sometimes I think it's best just to walk away. I don't know.
Okay.
Not everyone wants to hear you telling them that what they're saying is Lashon Hara, especially when they're fully aware of it.
Okay, very good. So that's true, but does that take away from your obligation to say something? You might be right. You not might be right. You are right. Right? Unfortunately, a lot of people don't like to be called out about anything, right? Especially, that their chatter and their yenting is wrong. I'm just talking, leave me alone, whatever, you don't get it, right? It's just a joke, right? Whatever, all those things are just put out, right? But just because they might not listen, or just because they might, look at you as this weird person that wants to stop them from, having idle talk and yenting, right? Is that a reason not to say something, right? If you're with a bunch of friends and you are someone that does not eat pork anymore, or you're someone that doesn't mix milk and meat anymore, right? Whatever it is, if you have or you never have, right? But you're with a bunch of colleagues or friends or whatever it is, and they're doing it, right? And they might say, why are you so religious? Why are you doing that? Or you decided to put on a kippah, or you decided to dress more modest, whatever it is, right? Is that a reason not to do it because other people might mock you or say something, right?
But that's different than telling someone else what to do.
But if it's the right thing to do, so then it doesn't make a difference. Yes or no? I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just throwing out the question that you're 100% correct that it is very likely that, right? Or they will mock you, but is that a reason, right? Is that a reason not to say that they're doing something wrong, either for yourself or for them, that you have that obligation? You're right, Emily. You're right that they will, not for sure, but it's likely that they will mock you or say something or whatever, or just give you this funny face of like, whatever, like you're just so religious, or you're just so out of it. Like, it's like, come on, like get with the program, right? But is that a reason why not to say something? Yes, we like to preserve ourselves. We don't like to be hurt, right? That's part of our nature. We don't like to be hurt. Right? We don't like when other people will look at us in a bad way, right? We don't like it when other people think that we are, extreme or whatever. And that is part of our nature. And that is why sometimes people don't do certain things around other people. Right? They know it did not only in Lashon Hara, but in anything. Let's say you are someone that are growing. You are someone that is taking on something, or it's something that you are trying to enhance, so whatever it is in yourself and in your community. But it's human nature. A lot of times when you're hanging out with people that are not the same level as you are, right? Or they might not understand, or they might understand, but they might, look at you funny or whatever it is, even if they are malicious, or even if they're not malicious, they're just ignorant, or they're not ignorant, they just don't know, and they might not even say something, but it's part of our nature to not do something because of what other people think, right? And that is a big thing that we have to work on, especially with our practicing Judaism, right? What is right is wrong. Of course, you have to do it the most curing way and the most gentle way and try to explain it, but we have to stick for what's right is right and wrong is wrong. So why would this be different if there's Lashon Hara being said? Again, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just playing devil advocate over here. Anybody else?
That's just not your role. Yeah, your role is to do what's, but
Go ahead.
but not your role to go around and push that on other people.
Why is it not I'm part of this conversation, right? Why is it not my role to make sure that I don't hear Lashon Hara?
It's
Judging.
your role to not accept what's being said, to excuse yourself, to try to change the subject.
Let me ask you, Kayla, let me ask you like this. What happens if you see a bunch of your friends going ahead and smacking people, right? And hitting people? Are you going to go ahead and say something?
Yeah. Well,
To interfere?
different.
Why? Because it's a physical and not emotional, or not hurtful in speech. As we said, speech can be much worse.
That's not something you can walk away from if somebody is hitting somebody, hurting them.
So they're hurting people by their mouth.
It's not the same thing.
I'm asking why not.
They can continue in their private conversation, and I can totally excuse myself from it or try to change the subject if I
So
can.
I could excuse myself from people that are bullies that are hanging around the playground and smacking a kid. I could just say, okay, it's not my business. Let me just stay out of it. I'll just walk away. I could do that too.
Yeah, there's a world of difference if they are actually hitting the person, as opposed to the person that they're talking about is not right. They're being hurt by it.
So let's say the person is right there. So you'll say it'll be a difference. Say the person's on the table and they just start talking about, hey, Judy, whatever. Would you make a difference?
I think there's probably a difference there in that the person is right there at the table. Yeah.
Okay. I'm
not here because 10 minutes ago you weren't here.
Right.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
What if you kind of say, I'm taking a class?
Now, I was hoping.
Go ahead.
And just kind of inform them about, like how there's different ways, like maybe, about talking and just bring up a little bit of that it could be, a bad thing to be doing this, with the Lashon Hara.
Right. So without being, okay, we could.
Without being judgmental of exactly what they're saying right then, but just
Right, okay,
kind
so-
of bring it up.
Right. So we're not, of course, we're saying not to be judgmental and all that stuff. Do I have an obligation to say something? That's the question. Do I have an obligation? The question is, should you attempt to say something to stop them? Right. If you have to, of course, you have to do it in a non-judgmental way. You don't want to be over an avera also. You don't want to be over a transgression. And of course, you always have to do it in a non-judgmental way. Right. But the question is it your obligation, or do you have to go ahead and say something? Suzette, go ahead.
I think my understanding is, yes, you have an obligation, even though I don't like the obligation that that is, put on me speaking on this. But I think a part of it that on a personal level that I think, I will struggle with is the feeling that if you're, each time you walk into the situation and you're the one speaking up, it's this feeling that, are you being like self-righteous, or are you, so that is a very human feeling. So even though the obligation is there, I don't necessarily want the obligation. So that's my response.
Okay, good answer. Anybody else?
Well, yeah. Well, can't you just say that that let's just change the subject. This is not what I want to hear.
Okay, so
Something to that effect.
Marilyn, you're right. We spoke about this in the past. If you could change the subject, if you could do this, you should, right? Avoid the conversation, try to avoid the subject. Let's say you can. And even if you can, right? Do you have, even if you can, let's say you've changed the subject, but afterwards everybody's saying, okay, the same way, there's an obligation to, this is coming from, there's a verse in the Torah, one has an obligation to, rebuke is a hard word, but to make people aware of something that they're doing that's wrong, right? So if someone is, someone that is holding at a level where they don't eat pork, right? And they go ahead and eat pork, and you have a somewhat relationship with them. You said, hey, don't forget, that's the wrong thing to do, right? If someone is doing something and they don't realize, right? So yes, you have an obligation to go ahead and tell them that there's something wrong going on over here. We all are siblings. We're brothers and sisters. We all have to look out for each other. And part of that is that there is an obligation, right? To, as I said, rebuke is a little hard of a word, but hokech, to make aware, to make people aware of something that they're doing wrong. So let's say you change the conversation. Now, do I still have an obligation to tell them that they did something wrong?
Well, you could say, in my opinion.
It's not your opinion, it's the Torah's opinion.
Well, oh, okay. I thought it'd make it a little lighter.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. It's
know.
not your opinion. It's the Torah's opinion. And again, this is something that's very important. Emily, I'll take you in a second, right? And I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying I have an easy time with it also. And we'll see the answer. There is, Suzette, there is a little leeway to how to make it that you don't have. We'll have to see, but. We have this mindset, especially in our society, and this mindset that we don't want to hurt other people's feelings, which is important, right? And also, we don't want to look like the self-righteous. We don't want to look like the person that is a know-it-all, and we don't also want to ruin our friendship with other people, right? We also don't want to ruin our friendship with other people. And that's very important. And all those things are important, but at the same time, right? Those things are not to be instead of making sure that the right is being righted and the wrong is being righted. That it's not. We still have an obligation, right, to make sure that we are doing the right thing and make sure that we educate or let other people know that they're doing the right thing within our preview, which we'll talk.
Wrong thing, you mean?
What?
You mean the wrong thing?
Right. Make sure that people are righting the wrong, right? Or make sure that the wrong thing is not being continued, and that we are not part. When we stand aside, right? It's as if we are part of something that's wrong, right? Don't stand on the side while your friend is being hurt. It's a verse in the Torah also. You can't stand on the side. This idea of being, neutral, or the idea of, being that, I'm just going to stay out of it, right? There's no such thing in Judaism. There is no such thing. Being parav, right, as we term it, right? Parav, not milchiks, not fleishiks, but it's a term that we use, right? Being parav is not it's only for food, right? It's not for our actions, right? Either we're doing the right thing or we're doing the wrong thing, right? This idea of just staying neutral is not a thing in Judaism. It's not. We're doing the right thing or we're doing the wrong thing. Now we have to know what falls under the right thing, what falls under the wrong thing. Go ahead, Emily.
Are you saying here that you're supposed to point out, I'm like, Lashon
I
Hara?
didn't say anything yet. I'm just playing devil advocates with everybody right now.
I'm saying, because then you could extend it way beyond Lashon Hara
Yes.
to every single thing someone's doing wrong, and you will certainly have 0 friends within a week.
100%.
Tell everyone what they're doing wrong.
100%. You're right. We are talking about Lashon Hara, but I said it's for other things too. This is.
But I think it also.
We're talking about Lashon Hara. I know we're talking Lashon Hara, right? But yes, it is also about other things.
But I can also see like a difference between like, so someone, let's say 2 people are speaking badly about someone else. To me, that's different. Like in terms of you're saying someone is getting hurt versus like the 2 people are gossiping about whoever versus like someone is like, not making a bracha, or someone is eating something not kosher. To me, I feel like there's a difference when, and I'm not saying that that's okay, but I just feel like maybe there's some sort of differentiation between, like you were saying to Chayaleh, like if someone's getting hit or whatever, just walk away, versus someone is making their own choice in like the Ben Adam Lamakom area, that maybe that's not your place to stay, especially if like they have they're not holding there, or they're not, or that. Or
right. So if I made this in. Right. So there's definitely a difference. The difference is not from the obligation of hokeach, of just for clarification's sake, rebuking, which I think is a little harsh word. It's the hokeach is more than just rebuking. It's out of love and affection and brotherly, right? But right, as it says, your nation, your family, your countrymen, right? But right, there is definitely a difference regarding. There's no difference regarding hocheach, the obligation of telling the other person, but there is a difference of, right, I'll tell him do not stand idle while your friend is being hurt, right? So when, and we'll talk about hocheach in a mesech, the obligation of rebuking in a minute, right? But yes, when someone else is being hurt, like over here in Lashon Hara, as we mentioned before, there's 2 obligations that for you to say something. Number one is because they are doing something wrong, right? And therefore you might have an obligation to rebuke them. Number 2, right? Someone else is getting hurt and you're not allowed to stand idle while your friend is being hurt, right? So when someone else is, as you said, not making a bracha or whatever it is, or, doing something that's just affecting them, right? So then there's only the one obligation, right? When someone else is getting hurt, right? If it's physical, right? If it's monetary, if it's Lashon Hara, emotional, whatever it is, their name, whatever it is, whatever is being hurt, there's another obligation. The obligation of you're not allowed to stand idle while your friend is being hurt, right? And we talked about that in the past. We talked about those 2 obligations in the past, right? Okay, so just to sort of wrap things up a little bit over here, because I do want to talk about Hanukkah a little bit also, right? Everything you guys said is correct. Let me throw that out there. What you guys all said is correct, right? There is this feeling. There is a difference. Am I going to be? Are they going to listen to me? Are they not going to listen to me? The bottom line is, right? And we're going to say it like this: there is an obligation that you have to say something. That the starting point is, right? Sorry. This way. Right? The starting point is there. My whole hand's in there. Right. The starting point is right that you have an obligation to say something. You have an obligation to make sure that there is that your friend is not being hurt, and that you are protecting. You're making them aware of something that they're doing wrong. But at the same time. Right. At the same time, right, has a clause, right? A clause, right, that is an extremely important clause. But before we get to that clause, I just want to reiterate. And I know this goes a little bit against our way of life, this goes a little bit against our comfort level, goes a little bit against how our emotions are and what makes us feel better, or our friendships and things like that, right? And it's something that we have to think about. It's something that we have to reflect on, that we have to be stronger, right, than our emotions. Right? We have to be stronger. We're doing it for the right reason. We're doing it because we love them. We don't want them to do wrong. Right? The same way parents, right, have to discipline their children. And I'm not saying other people are children, right? I'm just saying, same way you have to discipline each other and it hurts you, right? You have to take away their tablet, or you have to whatever, or you have to tell them that they're doing something wrong, or a teacher or a school. Also, there's discipline. There has to be discipline. You have to tell people that they're doing something wrong, and sometimes it hurts you. Sometimes they don't like you, and they say they hate you, right? For until the next morning, right? Whatever it is, right? But you have to discipline them, and it's hard. But you understand that that's something that you have to do. There's also we have an obligation to make sure, right, that other people are not necessarily doing the wrong thing, and also, and this is another caveat, it's also when I don't say anything, right? There's a concept in Judaism called shtika kehoda'ah. When you don't say anything, shtika, when you stay quiet, kehoda'ah, it's as if you are admitting to what's going on. Right? If you just stand idle and you don't say anything, it's as if you are agreeing to what's going on. And that's also wrong. So not only are you not saying anything, but part of the obligation of rebuking other people is also making sure that you are aware, right? Even though you might know in your heart, but you are doing an action and other people know that you hold that this is wrong. Because other people might say, look, Avi Feigenbaum is just being quiet over here. He's okay with this. Yeah, it must be okay. This must not be Lashon Hara. Or this might not be a problem to eat. Or this might not be a problem to do or to act or to say. Or you don't need to make blessings on this. Whatever it is, right? Because by you being quiet, you also have to think about that people learn from your silence. Because there is no thing as being, Switzerland. There's no such thing like that. Right? There is no such thing as power in our actions, only in our food. Right? There is no such thing. Either we feel it's right or we feel it's wrong. But the clause that one has to remember, and that's the next part that they talk about, all right? However, if you look at the second line, however, if they ignore you, don't persist unless you feel you have a chance to make an impact. Furthermore, if you are in a community in which Shmiras Lashon is widely ignored and you are unsure whether their words will have an impact, you should not speak up. Right? If they would persist anyways, it is better not to rebuke them and cause them to sin, right, on purpose, right? So there's 2 points. Number one, right? If you said something and they're not, don't persist, right? If you say, hey guys, maybe let's switch the conversation. Hey, this is not really the best, why are we talking about, and there's ways of doing it. You don't have to come out, you guys are sinners, right? You don't have to go that way, right? People think that whenever you're rebuking something, that's what I say, that's not rebuking, like, someone from the pulpit, telling you that all the, hellfire is coming down, right? That's not what we're talking about. Right? There's ways of rebuking, right? Of telling people that they're doing something wrong in the most nicest and kindest and non-judgmental way. He said, hey guys, probably not the best thing to talk about this. You could say it that way. You could just say it now, very nonchalant, right? Let's talk about something else, because why are we talking about Yankel Smunkel, right? Why are we talking about Beryl Smerrill, right? Why are we talking about them, right? Let's just move on. Who cares, right? There's ways of doing things, right? In a very not in a aggressive and right, because there's ways of doing things. Again, we don't have to scream out that they're sinners, right? But at the same time, right, do not persist it if you know that you're not the right person to say it. And if you know that your words are not going to be heard, right, there's 2 points. Number one, right, you could assume that they might not have learned Lashon Hara and they don't know all the intricate details of Lashon Hara or anything else, what kosher is, right, making blessings, what blessing is, what Shabbat, all these things, the intricate details or a variety of details, or they. And there's a difference of doing something unknowingly or unaware of, even if you might know it, but it's not something that you have yet developed inside of you, and doing something knowingly, right? There's a difference of the transgression. Number two, right? As we mentioned before, you're not allowed to can't give rebuke. God put a clause in there, make sure there's no sin. Says the Talmud and the commentaries that if you know that they're not going to listen to you, right, so then you're not accomplishing anything. All you're doing is creating hatred, right? You're not accomplishing anything, right? So for yourself, you have to tell yourself, you have to move away, you have to change the conversation. And that's what we spoke about in the past, right? To avoid all this, right? But if you know they're not going to say, listen to you, if you're able to just say one line like, hey guys, let's change the conversation, right? And you're not coming down with hellfire, right? So then that's fine. At least you are showing that you're not happy with this. That component of saying, hey, I don't think it's the right thing, right? But you're not rebuking them, in the strongest way, and then move on, right? Because you made your point, right? You're not coming down. They're not going to hate you. You're just saying, hey, let's change the conversation. It's probably not the best conversation, and then move on, because they're not going to listen to you, right? And all you're going to do is create more animosity, more hatred, and it's not going to accomplish anything, right? So there is that clause in there. And there is that clause, but it's a clause. That's not the best. It is the best action, because that's why the clause is there. But if you do have the authority, means to say you have the wherewithal, people are going to listen to you. You're someone that people will listen to, right? You have a way of being able to say it in a way that's that will be heard, right? You're in a situation, you're just with one friend or whatever it is, or you're in your own Shabbos table, right? You could think of different scenarios, right? Where you're the rabbi, you're a teacher, you're a community person, you're a very good friend, whatever it is. It's someone that you will listen to. So yes, you do have that obligation. That is, you have that obligation. Number one, that they don't think that you think it's right, and that you don't build within yourself, because when you don't do something, it affects you, right? When you don't do something, it still affects you, and it rubs off slowly but surely. It starts rubbing off because you're not doing anything about it, right? And also, for them, if you have that ability to help them out, you have an obligation to let them know that they're doing something wrong and try to help them change. You have that obligation. There is that clause, and that clause is unfortunately, I'm saying, it's because of our relationships with people and the society we live in. I'll take your question in a minute, right? That clause is used more often than not, because people do not like being rebuked. People do not like being told what to do, right? Unfortunately, a lot of people don't have that deep-rooted relationship that they could say something with just any random person or any person in Kiddush, even if they're friends or whatever it is, right? They do a barbecue together, but they don't have that relationship or that ability to do that. So that clause is used more often than not, right? But we can't forget that we do have that obligation. Right. And the important part of it is that this obligation is reminding us, right, that what is right, we have to make sure that is spread out into the world, right? That is bringing light into the world, right? That is true light into the world. What is right, in the nicest way, again, and if they're not going to be heard, so then don't do it. Right? But if you have that ability, or strengthen within yourself, or with your family, or your people that you're close with, you have that obligation to stand up for what you believe in. I know society has a hard time with that these days. Right? Everybody has to be friendly, and it's important to be friendly. And I'm friendly with a lot of people that I disagree with, right? We disagree with, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? We could disagree on things, right? But I'm friendly with them. But at the same time, they know what I believe. And most of them, I would say 99% of them respect me for it. Because I'm a straight shooter, and I tell them, right, in the most respectful way, and I'm careful what I say when I say, because I know different people holding different levels and how to say it, right? If it's in a more of a community setting, if it's a class setting, or it's an individual setting, it depends on how and when to say something. But they know what I believe. They know that I'll stand up for my belief, right? But at the same time, I respect them as an individual, and it's not a conflict. But I still have to stand up for what I believe in. We're living in a society that's hard for that. And that's the bottom line of this. And Emily, I'll take your question in 1 minute, but just tying it into Hanukkah, that's really what Hanukkah is all about, my friends. That's really what Hanukkah is all about. What did the Maccabees, right? I know the Israeli government made the Maccabees, the Maccabee games, right? But that's not what the Maccabees were about. Right? The Maccabees were stood up, as it says in the Al Anisim, right? The weak, right, in the hands of the strong in the hands of the weak. The strong in the hand of the weak. They were weak. They weren't the mightiest. They didn't run a 2-minute mile or whatever, a minute mile, or I don't know how these things work, right? But they didn't do it, right? They were not the strongest, right? But they stood up for what they believed. That's what the Maccabees are really all about. They stood up for their belief, They stood up for Judaism. They could have just integrated. They could have just said, we'll stay parab. We'll just do our thing. Right? We have no obligation to help the rest of the Jewish people. We're going to hide out in our caves and we'll learn our Hanukkah story. We'll play the dreidel whenever the Greeks come around, right? And we'll just do our thing. No, they stood up for what they believed, right? And they put their own physical life on the line, right? And they went out and they fought and they taught and they quote unquote rebuke, but it was teaching. And God made the miracle and allowed them to win. Right? And that's why there was a miracle of the oil. Why was there a miracle of the oil? There's no need for the miracle of the oil. Right? There's a concept of if you don't have something, you're not obligated. If they didn't have any oil, God wouldn't hold them accountable. They didn't have any oil that was pure. But God allowed them to make the miracle because the oil is the only liquid that doesn't mix with other liquids. The oil is the only liquid that doesn't mix with other liquids, and it always rises to the top. Because we could be next to each other. We could be living in the societies, right? And we have to be friends and we have to, respect each other. But at the same time, right, we have to realize that our obligation of the oil, it only makes a fire because it doesn't mix with the other liquids. If it mixes with the other liquids, it wouldn't make a fire oil. Because it'll be part water, part milk, part whatever, it won't make fire. The light could only come strong, right? Because it doesn't mix, because we're strong for what we believe, what the Maccabees represented, right? And that's the idea that we're talking about today, that we have to be strong, we have to be kind and friendly and everything. But at the same time, we also can't lose our values, and we can't forget who we are. And yes, and sometimes we have that obligation to say something, and sometimes it's just a small little thing for us people to realize that we don't hold that that's right. It's not our place to rebuke them because they're not going to listen, or they don't know how to listen, or whatever. I'm not the right person for them to listen, but I at least have to know for myself, for my family, and they should know that I know that it's wrong. Right? Now that I'm judging them, that it's wrong. Right? And that's the idea of rebuking. That's really the depth of what Hanukkah is all about. Right? The holiday of us fighting physically for our spirituality, for what's right and wrong. Okay, that's my 2 cents. Emily, you wanted to say something?
Okay, I have a question and I have a comment.
Okay, go ahead.
If no one responds. But so my question is, if let's say you're in a scenario where you're with 2 friends who are aware of the concept of Lashon Hara, they may not be in this class, they probably aren't in this class. They definitely, you know what I'm saying? Like they're not studying the laws of Lashon Hara, but they're aware of like the problem that like you shouldn't be speaking about other people, and they're speaking about other people. Do you have to say like, guys, that's Lashon Hara, let's change the subject? Or can you just change the subject? Like, do you have to state the fact that like they're speaking Lashon Hara, or can you just like change the subject? Like, is that good enough?
So I really think it depends. If you have that relationship with them and they won't look at you and they'll say, oh, right, okay, that's Lashon Hara. So then, yeah, you have to say it's Lashon Hara because that's part of our learning opportunity, right? Because even though they're learning it, right, but part of learning something is also making it part of us, right? We know a lot of information, right? But to live that information, a lot of times we need constant reminders, right? We need constant. It's like, someone that's learning how to drive. Right? I'm only thinking about this because Batsheva just talked to me about getting her permit. Not yet. She's not turning 15 until June, so we have time, right? But someone that's learning how to drive, they learn all the rules, right? You have the book and you're learning the rules. I don't know now, maybe it's online, right? I remember, sitting on my bed and reading the book, right? You know all the rules, but then until you actually start driving and you start putting it, right? And that's why you have to practice driving, right? Till it becomes second nature. Right, so till it becomes second nature, you have to drive with someone else. Right? And they said, no, watch out, you're too close, right? Don't forget to look at the mirrors, right? Don't forget to turn on your turn signal, right? It's because until it becomes second nature, even though you know the information in your head, right? But until it becomes second nature, right? You need reminders. You need constant reminders, right? And that's the same thing with our Judaism, right? We have a lot of information in our head, right? And I know myself also. We know a lot of things that are right and wrong. Right. And until we are able to make it more of a muscle, and that's more practicing, more learning, more talking about it, being more aware of things. If it's Lashon Hara, if it's Shabbat, if it's kosher, if it's prayer, it's remembering to make a blessing, or wherever one's holding. And wherever one's holding, we have a lot of information in our head. right? But we have to keep on strengthening that muscle, right? To make it more part of us, right? That it becomes more second nature, not that we become dull to it, God forbid, right? Because that's a whole nother topic. We have to make sure that Judaism is alive, right? But the practice and the awareness of it has become more part of our routine, right? So yes, if you have that relationship, when you tell them, hey guys, Lashon Hara, let's change the topic, right? Remember, we're learning Lashon Hara. You can make it like, you can say it like in a fun way, right? We're learning Lashon Hara. You know, this is a great example to remind us of a scenario where we sometimes lose ourselves and we forget about it, right? I don't know, however you want to say it, right? But if you do have that relationship, then you definitely should say it. If not, so then you could just change the subject and hopefully they'll cop by themselves, right? But if you do have that relationship, then you definitely should say something.
Okay.
Questions? I have about another 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
So can I just make one comment? Unless someone else has a question.
Anybody else have a question? Would you guys want me to turn off the recording? Make a difference? Yes, Martha wants me to turn off the recording? Okay, we'll turn off the recording.